Hi, you're listening to Rocket Therapy, the official podcast of Edmonds College. I am Logan. Today we have Austin,
Hello.
Bree,
Hi.
Kesh,
Hey.
and myself, and we are watching the run-up to the SpaceX Demo 2 launch. The first crewed launch from U.S. soil. It is orbital, and not just a launch into space, but orbital. So, what first? What do you want to talk about first?
Let's start with what is DM2?
We have not launched humans from U.S. soil into orbit since 2011 with STS-135. So this is a return to orbit for us. It's a commercial one. It's not directly government run like the space shuttle was. And SpaceX is launching it. It is called DM2 because their earlier mission was just to launch the same capsule up unmanned with a dummy inside. What was the dummy's name? Does anyone remember that?
I don't think I remember it, no.
I don't remember, no.
It was Ripley, right? They're going with the whole alien thing.
Yeah.
So why is this important?
It's iconic, for one thing. We haven't done this in forever, and nobody's done it this way.
By this way, you mean?
With a mesh between government, NASA, and privatized SpaceX, working together to achieve this common goal.
Mm-hmm.
And who aren't we working with right now to do this?
Blue Origin? No.
I was referring to Russia.
Oh yeah, with the Soyuz capsule.
Currently, we're relying on the Soyuz capsule with the Russians to send us to the ISS.
So yeah, this is some savings. So that is exciting. It's great economically, but personally, I'm more excited about the advancements here in making space more commercial than.
That is one of the advantages we get from privatization, with the Falcon 9 SpaceX contribution.
Well, you're saying using commercial launch, there's a lot of things that are more capable and more things that can be done than you would be able to do if it was run by a government agency.
Yeah, like sell tickets to the moon, which
Exactly.
I'm pretty sure SpaceX already did years ago.
I think it was just one dude.
Yeah, that was a billionaire from Japan.
Wasn't that supposed to be this year?
Probably something like that. I mean, that was what was it, Project Hello Moon, something like that, and he was supposed to bring like 7 artists with him and Elon. I honestly was not too happy about that. Like artists, okay, art's great, but bring some scientists and engineers.
I just think it's a good funding opportunity for people to buy these unique experiences for themselves, and that goes back into making it to developing better technology, etc. It's a funding opportunity that the government would never be able to do with the way it's structured, and I like that SpaceX is able to take advantage of it, even if I would never be able to afford a ticket myself at this day and age.
Well, why is the government not able to do it? Or why is SpaceX now able to do it? Would they have been able to do it, 20, 30 years ago?
I don't know if there's any law regarding NASA not being able to do it, but they've never done it, and there's no expectation that they do it because they're a government agency and thus supposed to be funded by the government as far as the stereotype goes, versus a privatized agency, which is supposed to be funded by sources of revenue like tickets, like perhaps grants, etc., but it's not 100% government funded, and the stereotype gives them a little leeway, at least socially being more accepting of them selling tickets as opposed to NASA selling tickets. I know they already sell tickets to things like their Space Center in Houston and centers in Florida and such, but it's kind of a stigma, I guess. I don't know if there's any actual reason why they haven't.
There was one analogy I heard last night while watching one of their shows talking about everything leading up to today. It was from one of their flight directors who's in charge of the ISS docking missions, was that it's what space flight was before the SpaceX Falcon 9 rockets. It was pretty much like flying cross-country and then throwing away the airplane. It's not cost effective. But what SpaceX has done is saved an astronomical amount of money and time by reusing the rocket and reusing pretty much everything except for maybe, actually, I don't know what isn't reused.
That definitely makes it cheaper. But
Yeah.
piggybacking on what Bree said, I think there is not necessarily stigma, but if you as a government agency and NASA are going to send people up that are paying to go up, you also really have to justify, okay, why are we taking this group for doing this versus this group? I mean, they already do this kind of thing or have done in the past when they're sending out missions and they go to like different universities or whatever and say, hey, do you have an experiment? We could throw it on there. But when you start setting up people, it starts getting a little bit more questionable. You have to involve a lot of training. So SpaceX has a lot more flexibility to say, hey, do you have the money? We'll send you up there and you could do whatever. You don't have to go through a whole bunch of oversight, government oversight necessarily. Yeah, there's not a lot of red tape. Not to say there shouldn't be some amount of regulation, but there's not the same amount. It doesn't need the justification. It just needs the funds.
I would say in that respect there is less oversight, but then another aspect was safety is a big concern. So I remember seeing that it has a slightly higher margin of safety than the space shuttle missions. And one stipulation NASA had was it needed to have the what's it called, the evacuation system. I can't remember what it's called exactly.
Launch abort or escape system.
I mean, you should have one in any crewed vehicle that you're setting up to space, if you ask me.
Well, if you go down that road, we're going to start talking about Starship, which will not have one at all.
Let's say something goes wrong with the booster, with Super Heavy. How did the crew on Starship get off of Super Heavy?
Well, just Starship, it can act as its own abort system, because Starship, from what we know, will likely be at least suborbital capable itself, if not barely. Like it might be an SSTO, but with very low payload. So it should be able to itself land. But the question is, what happens if something goes wrong with Starship? Okay, that's going down a path that maybe is not super focused on what's going on today.
I don't know. SpaceX working with NASA on this project leans more credibility to them being able to do commercial flights safely as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of okay with it on that front, especially if they hold the same standards for their commercial flights as they are holding for this government collaborative flight.
Well, they built a lot of trust in doing resupply missions to the ISS, and they did have some failures there, but they learned a lot from that and built a trust and reputation through doing those types of missions before even attempting anything crewed. Because this is the third launch after Demo 1, the escape capsule test, and then now it's the crewed test.
Yes, the Demo 1. Yeah, I don't remember what they called the escape one. But yeah, you just said they had some failures along the way and they learned from them. But I mean, this is being put out there as the start of a new era, as we're launching people who can pay up. And it's hard to believe that sometime in the not too distant future, if this really picks up, we're not going to have our first civilian accident that has a fatality. Like the start of this era, but that's where this is going to eventually lead. And the question is how we're going to react to that when that happens. When after launch 6,000, all of a sudden someone dies, just catastrophic accident, abort system doesn't work, or the capsule itself has a fault and rips open. Who knows what happens?
Going back to the plane analogy, to me it's another plane crash. Like they happen. It's sad, it's tragic, and it sucks, but
planes have been around for a long time, but it's kind of the same deal with cars. And another state in Elon country, Tesla, doing the autopilot cars. People are used to car crashes that are man controlled, but they're very uncomfortable with automated vehicles. And we've seen it a few times. The minute there's even a fender bender, like these things aren't safe, even if that provides statistics showing that they're actually safer than human drivers. So I think we would, at least for a while, see the same thing with spaceflight. Even if you could show that given the amount of flights that have been happening after a certain amount of time, it's overall safer than flying in a plane or riding your bike. We're still going to get that backlash of this isn't safe. We should never have been putting people just paying to go into space.
Well, to my knowledge, the statistics for manned rocket failures, while they're fairly low, they're not nearly as low as there would be for other forms of transportation.
Yeah, it's not yet the safest way to travel.
Yeah.
And planning this to be safer than the space shuttle, I don't think it's saying very much. I don't think that thing was actually that safe. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is that what they were how they were describing it as?
Well, so was that you, Austin, that said that that was a requirement that this was safer?
I'm looking right now for the exact number, but it is slightly more safer than the space shuttle was. Just that margin, that 1 in whatever it is chance of something happening, it is lower. But again, there's still that chance there no matter what.
And if something happens, you have an abort system.
There is the abort system, which can be triggered by the computer itself, ground control, or the astronauts, but it's still, things happen.
Yeah.
Earlier today on the Demo 2 feed, they were mentioning that any 2 things on the thing could fail and it would be fine. They would be able to overcome that. Like, I want these guys to be able to come back to Earth if they can.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even call that gravy. I'd say that's a flat requirement.
Well, imagine if like the first one of the first airplane flights had ended in like a complete catastrophe. Like, airplanes wouldn't have been able to get as nearly as advanced as they are today.
I'm pretty sure a couple of the first few did. Not the Wright brothers, but several other guys.
Well, you can keep this right in space territory with remember what happened to Apollo 1.
Mm-hmm.
People thought that was going to tank the Apollo program. It didn't, but it definitely made everyone clench just a little bit.
I like that we have all this experience to go off of. Like, we have all the Apollo missions. We have so many different test flights. They said they tested just the parachutes, like 80 times, which is...
Well, that's a lot, but it also is somewhat of a result of SpaceX's thing with continuously changing things, like rapid upgrades. And NASA, it was either 7 or 9. NASA required that they tested a single version of the Falcon 9 Block 5, no changes, 7 or 9 times, and show that it works every single time before they had put crew on top of that version.
That's a nice factor of safety.
It is, but it does hinder innovation just a little bit when they say, well, we just changed this one little thing.
I mean, as it is, the entire process is innovative with the return of the boosters and such.
It is.
So...
But a lot of that has to do with them not having crew on them. If they're wanting to upgrade that system, then that upgrade system that may not have anything to do with the launch and just have to do with the return would have to be done completely on uncrewed stuff. And they'd have to lock that in place for a while again to get crew on top of that next version.
There's enough uncrewed shipments going out, I suppose, that there's enough opportunities for that to happen that I don't necessarily think it's that much of a hindrance. Just because there's opportunities for that sort of a thing, as it is.
There are, but it does have to be 7 different ones. It can't be fly the same version 7 times, to my understanding. So, still sticking to the why this is important, one thing that I see with this is that for the longest time, we've made just the launch of astronauts into orbit a huge focus. And that is the focus of today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always been shown as like them going through some big hulk of engineering. You've seen the rickety elevators bringing them up to the ramp, and they're walking across in slow motion, and it looks like it's a repurposed boom from a crane. It's just like, we've thrown this together, and this is dangerous. And one thing that SpaceX is bringing to it is making it look like a terminal.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, this is just business. This is regular launch. The cool stuff's up there. You need to get up into space to actually see what we need to focus on. Like right now, we're having a lot of talk about going back to the moon, which we've done before. And I think that's great. But at the same time, I'd rather talk about, the science or what we're discovering out there, not just, hey, we made some more footprints on the moon. Yay, us. I'd rather something a little bit more substantial. So if we could take the focus off of just getting up there or getting on the moon and put it on actual mission, then I think that's great.
Sort of normalizing the process of getting there and fantasizing the data that comes from getting there.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well, I was going to bring up the next point, and I think Kesh might be the one to answer this. How did this program start, the Commercial Crew Program?
I believe that was under the Obama administration after the Constellation program was canceled. The original plan was to use the Orion capsule and the Ares 1 to transfer astronauts to the International Space Station. The first launch was supposed to be in 2015, but the Orion program and the Constellation program as a whole was just so hopelessly delayed and so hopelessly over budget. They decided that it just would not be the Obama administration decided it would not be a worthwhile use of NASA funds. So they decided that it would be a better use of NASA funds to partner with certain commercial launch providers in order to launch astronauts into the International Space Station. So far, I think we have 3 companies that are contracted to provide launch. So far we have 2 that have proven that they're capable. And I think we have 2 more that can be added. We've got Boeing and NASA. Mm-hmm. Boeing would be another conversation. And then we've got Sierra Nevada and Blue Origin, who have not yet produced a vehicle. Is that correct?
I know Origin's working on their new Glenn rocket.
Mm. I have not seen anything, any actual photos of any of that yet. That still seems pretty paper.
We saw parts of it at the Edmonds College Rocketry Convention.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, because they're working on the launch site and facilities for that, and I don't know if they've begun construction yet.
They've definitely begun construction, because I talked to one of the ladies who presented there, and she'd gone and seen and supervised a lot of the construction. Okay. So it's begun. I don't know what stage it's at currently.
Yeah, I wish they had let a little bit more out.
Yeah.
I do appreciate how candid SpaceX is about their operations and how much they are willing to live stream everything, and how is it opaque? No.
Transparent.
Transparent. That's the word.
Definitely not opaque.
How transparent they are about their processes and such. It's kind of refreshing and reassuring, and I think it also speaks back to that normalizing the process sort of a thing, and just allowing people to focus on their dreams.
Mm-hmm. They did have that one supercut of all their failed landing attempts that they released.
Yeah,
that's leaning into it right there. That's great.
I mean, there's a lot to be learned from any kind of failure, though, especially with, going back to the Apollo 1, when the loss of the crew for that, so much was learned from that failure.
If in the tragic event that this does fail in some way or shape or form, then, it's just another data point in their set of data points.
There's still will we have the stomach to say, go get another data point? Because it takes approval.
Yeah, hindsight is 2020. Right now, sitting here watching these guys prepare for their mission, it's easy to say that. And I'll admit, afterwards, I'll be pretty sad if this does not succeed. At least in some fashion. I don't know. My parents talked about watching the first landing on the moon on TV, and just their experience with that and how amazing it was. And I think I'm finally feeling that sort of a hint. Watching this process here.
Well, I'd say for our generation, where say our parents watched people land on the moon for the first time. This is our version of that. This is our generation's big, exciting space exploration
The second
event.
space age.
The second space age, yeah.
Sitting here today, it really does feel like that to me.
Mhm.
I know there's just a lot of excitement about it. I mean, it's a big, and I know I'm very excited. I know we all are.
If I'm honest, outside of the space community, people seem fairly apathetic towards it. At least all the people I know.
How's that?
I don't know. No, every time I bring up, hey, in a couple days we're launching astronauts again, no one seemed to react.
It might already be normalized for them because they've already seen it.
Been there, done that in a way. Like, yeah, we've launched and got to the ISS. We honestly, we haven't stopped as like a whole, just specifically for SpaceX and NASA doing it from U.S. soil using a private company. That's not, it hasn't been done before.
Actually, my wife's workplace, which is biotech, each time something happens with SpaceX, she tells me how they're all talking about it. They're definitely talking about this right now.
It's definitely going to appeal to a certain sort of person, and of course, the people who aren't that sort of person are not going to care as much. It's the same with any other passion or hobby.
Yeah.
What goes back to what I think Logan was saying is everything looks so sleek, and that's what I heard Elon Musk saying. Is that's kind of having everything be updated and looking modern. It'll inspire a new generation of people that will go to space and want to be astronauts and do things like this and go to Mars. So it will be inspiring to the younger generation, even younger than ourselves.
No matter the politics, like Elon Musk is leaving behind quite the footprint on American culture and American history, if not world history.
I mean, they haven't been afraid of failure. He's gone ahead and they have failed, but they're not afraid of it. They've taken many steps to make the failures where it's okay to fail. And then here we are with a relatively high degree of certainty that this mission will be successful.
Well, that's part of the motto, isn't it? It's something along the lines of fail early and fail big, which is the exact opposite of the Blue Origin motto. Gradatis ferociter, gradually and slowly, gradually and ferociously is how it translates. And it's like, go slowly, but do it all right the first time. And I have to say, and I know people who like that mindset, but they're losing ground, and I think it's not the right way to go. Go learn something quickly. It's okay if you get something wrong and the public sees it.
I mean, it's a way to approach it, but I mean, learning curves and progression and things like that. Like if there's something that they've done that doesn't work, and they find out the first time they launch, I mean, and they haven't done any tests or anything prior to that.
I wonder if that also stems back to the sort of generational thing we were alluding to earlier, with how like Blue Origin is falling behind and they're taking things slow, measure twice, cut once sort of a thing, versus, the SpaceX approach, which is lots of little failures. Eventually you'll learn from them. Maybe that's why this is sort of appealing to, it seems like from our data, a younger generation.
Well, I mean, when the astronauts driving, they didn't take the Astrovan. They had two Teslas that were taking them.
Tesla Model X's with both the worm and the meatball logo on them. What do you guys think,
Nice.
meatball or worm? They had like a 30-minute conversation about this earlier.
I like the worm, at least for right now, for the little bit of retro. Like, we're going back.
Yeah.
I almost think it's a more modern look anyway. It's clean, it's cut, and it seems more like it would fit in with the modern style as opposed to the meatball logo. The worm logo is like literally the red NASA word. That's kind of like a squiggly line that spells out NASA. And then the meatball is like the blue circle with the red check mark in it.
It does look more modern, which is funny.
Because it's also more retro.
Fashion goes in cycles. I mean,
yeah.
They could have made the suits, the white suits they're wearing with bell bottoms. That'd be fantastic.
As it was, they were kind of penguin walking around the base, and like, ooh, that made me a little happy.
Watching them struggle to get into the Tesla.
Yeah. At one point, they mentioned they had to climb stairs from the elevator exit at like 225 all the way up to like 265, and I'm just like, ooh.
So there's a couple things that I've noticed just while watching their live feed of going through the process is like when they have their interviews, people are standing in what I'm gonna say is about like an awkward triangle. There was someone interviewing the NASA director and Elon Musk, and they were all kind of awkwardly standing in a triangle. The astronauts did when they went into the Teslas to go to the pad. There was a group of kids there, and they were
It was their
markings on the
kids there.
ground.
Mm.
It was their kids.
Yeah, their kids were
That's what it was.
outside when they went into the Teslas.
Yeah, because they went into like a 3-week quarantine prior to this to make sure that they didn't have the virus and wouldn't spread anything to the ISS.
So I was wondering if, like, well, they mentioned that while they were in the room getting their practice suits all checked out and such, and they were in the practice chairs, just kind of in this space before getting to the Teslas. And I was wondering if the people who are in that room with them, who are, checking out the suits and making sure they're good to go, do they have to go through quarantine too? Like, is it
I mean, they were all
because
wearing
they're within
masks.
6 feet, but they are wearing
Definitely.
masks? I don't.
I'd say I don't know. It would make
They-
make sense because I mean,
Yeah.
if some, I don't know.
Plus, they also have to be training while they're in that quarantine. They aren't gonna just sit there doing nothing. So does the entire
Yeah.
training team go into quarantine? It's
Well, I would guess at least some sort of increased restrictions on activity. Not necessarily quarantine, but like you are really on order from Grubhub and leave it outside the door lifestyle. Do not go to the store whatsoever if you want to be part of this crew. But
well, maybe
no, I haven't heard anything.
maybe the current situation with in the world right now is actually assisting in that, just because the culture is making more of a shift toward like space between people and encouraging quarantine efforts. Which could help when you're already expected to go into quarantine before heading to the ISS.
We have national anthem performance around there. What's going on with that?
Oh, so like one of the things that I noticed with as far as them launching during this time frame is like Kelly Clarkson literally I don't know if it was live at all. It might have been pre-recorded, but she phoned in her national anthem performance while they were doing their drive from the training center to the launch pad. And I just like that really kind of sent home just how seriously they are taking the situation right now. Like, yeah, they have their little awkward triangles. Yeah, Elon Musk did his hello to the astronauts from behind a 6-foot barrier, essentially. But it's just kind of a little like that's what sent it home, was watching the national anthem get sung from somebody's closet. Beautiful performance, I believe, but my internet did cut out halfway through.
Do we know anything about the two astronauts that are going up?
So
They
I
both have
believe
sons. We saw them earlier.
I believe they both have previously flown on past shuttle missions, so this isn't their first time going up before.
Yeah.
I know they're both married to astronauts. They actually,
Oh, really?
these two and their wives were all in the same astronaut training class. Yeah, so Douglas, who's the commander, looks like he's done 3 past missions.
Yeah, and one of them includes STS-135, which was the last shuttle mission.
And then Bob has also done 3 missions.
Yeah.
And they've both spent about, looks like 29, 28 days in space. So this isn't their first go around going into space.
It makes sense that they'd want some people who are a little more experienced in such things for maiden flight.
Well, even they were talking about this is completely different from what they've done before, because the shuttle had millions, thousands of switches around, and now they're down to a couple monitors, and like there's just screens. Like things are just super different from when they have launched, even from the space shuttle.
I mean,
yeah.
With the Dragon, I don't think the crew have much input during flight, do they?
They have a little bit.
A little bit. They can have the Dragon capsule release itself and escape if something happens. I believe they can fly. I believe
they mentioned that they have full control of flight capability if they ever need to.
Because it has 16 thrusters, and then there's 8 engines that are part of the egress. There's I don't know if any of you guys did it, but they put out like a little game thing. It's pretty much docking with the ISS using the Dragon capsule, and it has the controls, and it's just...
Yeah, I played that.
I spent like 10 minutes, and then I figured out that I'll have to dedicate a large amount of time to actually succeeding.
It's like when they first did it without the crew, they literally will just pause the capsule behind the ISS to make sure everything's in line. It's a whole thing, and it's pretty cool.
I'd rather do donuts in Kerbal Space Program. Sorry.
Yeah, that was funny playing it. Like first time loading up, like, oh yeah, this is all right, done. I played Kerbal.
Done the training.
Yeah, if you played Kerbal for more than a half hour, you could probably do this. Well, I won't say that.
I wonder if that could actually be a qualification for, becoming an astronaut. Like you put in X amount of time. Like it sounds like that and other smaller things that maybe you wouldn't think about could be, a lead-in into being an astronaut.
So one thing I just recently heard about was that they had NASA either just had a round of hiring for astronauts or applications, or will have another one, but they're looking for people that aren't just engineers, that are also like teachers and people in bio and just other industries outside of engineering. They're trying to get more people in. I think Logan was talking about sending artists up or something like that.
That was the Hello Moon, and they were sending up all artists, and that's what I did not like.
Yeah.
I mean, sending up a variety of people, I think, is good, because I mean that's what the future will be. You can't just send up engineers forever.
No, you can't.
And that might be the influence of SpaceX in the project again. The privatization, encouraging more of a community instead of just, okay, we have a mission, let's do it.
I thought it was just the billionaire guy who was paying for the tickets.
That's the artist.
Yeah, that was his decision.
I believe there's a set, looking on the... looks like there isn't a set duration for the mission. Like they have a return date, but it's not necessarily... But that's like the very latest they would stay.
I mean, that makes sense, weather depending.
Yeah. Mission duration 30 days to 119 days. So
they come back when they come back.
They come back when they come back. Yeah.
Did we want to talk about how the integrated launch system works? It was on there. Or did we really touch on it?
I don't think do we know enough about it to really talk about it?
I know this is the first one that is a pusher that's been used. Manned, at least. Because all the rest of the capsules that have launched with crew have had an escape tower as their crew abort thing.
I know there was a Soyuz launch a couple of years ago that used some kind of escape system. Was it a tower?
No, there was a Soyuz launch. It was only about a year ago, I think, and it didn't actually use its tower. It had already jettisoned it, but it had a problem with its second stage. So they just, at that point, they just went into a re-entry profile. They didn't make it into orbit, but it wasn't a dramatic escape. It's just, this isn't working. Let's go down.
I noticed this one. I'm watching their test was by the time they manually separated Dragon capsule from the Falcon 9, and when Falcon 9 became unstable because of that, and then when that eventually started to explode, that the capsule was already a mile away from the Falcon 9. So I believe the 8 engines will burn for about 10 seconds, and it gets them away. I think it can get them up into orbit or low orbit.
The escape system? No.
Yeah. No.
They were talking about earlier that, depending on where the fault happens, they could go all the way up or back down.
True, because they can get them. Like they can, if something happens on the pad, they can get up off the pad and into the ocean.
Yeah.
So it looks like at any point it'll work. So it could continue to get them up into space or into the ocean.
I'd say that'll be cool to see, but I don't want to see that. So.
Yes.
No, seeing the test was all I ever want to see. I don't want to. Yeah.
So, just talking about other ones. Are you guys familiar with what the Gemini had as its abort system?
I am not.
It had ejection seats.
Woo!
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it made a little bit of sense mid-flight, and they would eject out kind of sideways. But there's this big question: what if they had to do that on the pad? Like
Yeah.
they're sitting on the pad. Boom, boom. Those chutes better open up very quickly.
Mhm.
I don't really like that thought. That seems like that makes now seem like such a great improvement.
Like this looks like a comfortable abort. Those fancy
Well,
seats.
those
Yeah.
seats are custom made for them. They're
Mm.
literally like they have 3 different sizes to start with, and then they add like customized foam frame around the person when they're making it. The suits
Yeah,
themselves are also still hand sewn.
Mm-hmm.
my chair doesn't have that. I really want one of those chairs to sit in. All right, so we're all looking very much forward to this launch, and it's going to be really exciting to see. So we're going to take a short break here and then come back for the launch.
A few moments later.
So if we're not going to have the opportunity to launch, if the clock's going to run out, stand by.
Continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control. Go ahead and end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please. Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
So we just heard that the launch on May 27th has been scrubbed at T-minus 15-ish. And they've begun the auto cycling of scrubbing sequence stuff, and I'm not paying attention as much anymore. I am sad. This is now a reaction video. How do you guys feel? Austin, when's the backup launch?
There are two. So it looks like there are 2 backup launch windows. The first launch window is going to be Saturday, May 30th at about 12:30 our time, and then Sunday, May 31st at about 12 o'clock our time. Thank you guys for listening in. This has been Rocket Therapy, the official podcast of the Edmonds College Rocketry Club. We're going to be recording another video this Saturday on the backup launch date. During that video, we'll be talking about why Wednesday's launch was canceled. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, up is easy, down is hard.